The royal physician had not examined Duchess Catherine, yet Duke Sebastian displayed a sealed diagnosis declaring her incapable of bearing children. Before the entire court, he called her a fraud, revoked her household authority, and introduced a young boy whose supposed birth would disinherit Catherine from every property promised in her marriage settlement. Sebastian expected her powerful brothers to negotiate. Instead, General Marcus Ashford closed the only roads capable of carrying coal from Blackthorn's mines. Lord Justice Edmund placed the Duke's new inheritance petition under criminal review. Banker Nathaniel Ashford froze the accounts paying Sebastian's servants and political allies. Catherine took command of the retaliation herself. She would reopen nothing until her name was restored publicly, and every person involved in the false accusation was exposed. Then a messenger brought her the physician's original ledger. The page recording her supposed examination had been inserted recently, but beneath it remained the faint imprint of another entry. The erased patient's name began with a single letter, S. 6 hours earlier, Catherine had entered St. James's Palace as the Duchess of Blackthorn. She wore ivory silk, the sapphire necklace Sebastian had fastened around her throat on their wedding morning, and the composure of a woman accustomed to surviving rooms filled with people, waiting for her to fail. She had been summoned without explanation, though the unusual number of peers gathered in the presence chamber warned her that Sebastian intended something public. Her husband stood near the throne beneath the Blackthorn banner. Beside him waited Lady Beatrice Vale, the widowed daughter of a marquis, and Sebastian's newest political adviser. One gloved hand rested upon the shoulder of a pale, dark-haired boy. The child could not have been more than 6. Catherine stopped 3 paces inside the chamber. Sebastian did not meet her eyes. Lord Vale, Beatrice's father, stood among the ministers with a satisfaction he did not trouble to conceal. For months he had urged Sebastian to secure the succession before supporting his bid for a royal appointment. Catherine had warned her husband that Vale never offered influence without first calculating what he could seize in return. Sebastian had accused her of resenting his ambitions. Now a clerk unfolded a parchment bearing the seal of Dr. Silas Harcourt, physician to several noble households. The medical finding confirms, Sebastian announced, that her grace has concealed a permanent incapacity known to her before our marriage. A murmur passed through the chamber. Catherine's fingers tightened around her fan, but her voice remained level. Dr. Harcourt has never examined me. Sebastian finally looked at her. There was strain in his face, but also determination, the expression he wore whenever pride had carried him too far to retreat gracefully. You refused examination. You never requested one. I sent 3 letters, then produced them. A few heads turned toward the Duke. Beatrice stepped forward. Your Grace, this is hardly the place for such intimate unpleasantness. No, Catherine replied, looking directly at her. It is precisely the place my husband selected. The King's representative, Lord Chancellor Pembroke, raised a hand for silence. Sebastian should have paused then. He had been given one final opportunity to withdraw the accusation, request a private inquiry, or admit uncertainty. Instead, he gestured toward the boy. This is Arthur, he declared. My natural son, born before my father's death. I have petitioned the crown to recognize him as heir to the unentailed Blackthorn properties. The boy flinched as every gaze in the chamber settled upon him. Catherine studied his face. Dark hair, gray eyes, a small scar near the left temple. There was no obvious resemblance to Sebastian, but resemblance was a weak argument when titles and estates were at stake. Who is his mother? She asked. Sebastian's jaw hardened. A woman who died protecting his identity. How convenient. You will not interrogate a child. I am interrogating the man using him. That struck deeper than Catherine intended. Sebastian's face reddened, and the remains of restraint vanished. He announced that Catherine's household authority was revoked, her allowance suspended, and her apartments at Blackthorn Castle reassigned pending review of the marriage settlement. Then he placed his hand upon the boy's shoulder and spoke the words that ensured there could be no quiet reconciliation. For 11 years, my wife has given Blackthorn neither son nor daughter. She has allowed me to bear the shame of her barrenness, while she enjoyed the rank my family bestowed upon her. Silence swallowed the chamber. Catherine felt the insult enter her like a blade, but she refused to bleed for his audience. She removed the sapphire necklace. Sebastian's eyes followed it as she laid it upon the clerk's table beside his inheritance petition. My family bestowed £300,000, the Ashford coal roads, and half the capital that rescued Blackthorn from your father's debts, she said. Keep your necklace. We shall now discover which gift preserved your rank. She turned to the frightened child. Arthur's cuffs were too large. A faint blue stain marked his right thumb, and beneath the perfume clinging to his coat, Catherine detected another smell, camphor, sharp and medicinal. Has Dr. Harcourt been caring for you? She asked softly. The boy looked toward Beatrice. She pulled him behind her skirts. Sebastian ordered the guards to escort Catherine from the chamber. No one touched her. General Marcus Ashford had entered through the western doors with 2 uniformed officers behind him, tall, silver-templed, and still carrying the authority of 20 years in the king's army. Catherine's eldest brother surveyed the room until even Sebastian stepped back. Any guard who lays a hand upon my sister, Marcus said, will explain himself to his commanding general before sunset. Lord Justice Edmund Ashford appeared beside him in black judicial robes. Their youngest brother, Nathaniel, remained near the doors, already writing instructions in a small leather book. Catherine did not ask them to rescue her. She gave them orders. Marcus, withdraw Ashford protection from the North Road and the Eastmere Bridge. No Blackthorn coal wagon is to cross land belonging to our family. Sebastian stared at her. Those roads serve 6 villages. They will remain open to food, medicine, tenants, and passenger traffic, she replied. Only your commercial freight will be stopped. She turned to Edmund. Challenge the inheritance petition and demand the original birth, baptism, and guardianship records. Edmund inclined his head. Already drafted. Nathaniel, suspend Sebastian's personal credit, protect the tenant's accounts and wages, but release no money to his political committee or household. Nathaniel closed his book. Effective within the hour. You cannot blockade a duke's estate, Sebastian said. Catherine met his gaze. They are not blockading your estate. They are withdrawing what never belonged to you. She left the chamber on her own feet. By dusk, Blackthorn's coal wagon stood motionless before locked commercial gates. The Duke's London steward discovered that the household drafts would no longer be honored. 2 ministers returned Sebastian's invitations, rather than risk association with a disputed heir. Edmund secured a temporary order preventing Arthur's name from being entered into the property succession. Catherine established herself at Ashford House and converted her late father's library into a command room. Maps covered the central table. Copies of the marriage settlement, estate accounts, and road deeds were arranged along one wall. Her brothers expected grief. She permitted herself none. Sebastian will claim we are punishing his tenants, Marcus warned. Then we feed them, Catherine said. Send Ashford wagons through the roads we close to him, flour, lamp oil, and winter medicines. Mark every crate with my personal seal. Nathaniel smiled without amusement. He will hate that. He chose public war. I intend to make the difference between his pride and my authority visible. Near midnight, a mud-spattered messenger arrived carrying a parcel wrapped in oilcloth. He had been sent by Thomas Reed, a junior clerk in Dr. Harcourt's surgery. Reed had disappeared before the messenger reached London. Inside the parcel lay Harcourt's original appointment ledger. Catherine examined the suspicious page beneath a lamp. Its paper was newer than the surrounding leaves, and the stitching had been pierced twice. Someone had inserted the false examination after the ledger was bound. She placed a thin sheet over the page and rubbed charcoal gently across it. Indented marks emerged from the entry that had originally occupied that space. Most of the writing had been damaged when the false page was inserted. Catherine could make out only part of the date, several broken words, and the first letter of the patient's name. S. Marcus leaned closer. Sebastian? Or Silas? Or any number of names, Edmund cautioned. One initial proves only that another entry was removed. Catherine studied the damaged impression. But it proves Harcourt replaced a genuine medical record with a diagnosis for an examination that never happened. Edmund reached for the ledger but stopped before touching it. The original must be placed under judicial seal. If Harcourt realizes we possess it, he may destroy every related record in his surgery. Then he must not know, Catherine said. Nathaniel examined the ledger from across the table. Thomas Reed risked his life to send this. Whatever was written beneath that page frightened him enough to disappear. Catherine looked again at the solitary initial. Someone had removed another patient's medical history to create evidence against her. Whether the erased name belonged to Sebastian or someone else, Harcourt had chosen that particular entry for a reason. A knock sounded at the library door. A footman entered holding a small envelope sealed with black wax. It was delivered by a boy who refused to give his name. Catherine broke the seal. Inside was a strip of blue-stained cloth and a single sentence. The Duke's false heir will not survive tomorrow's journey to Blackthorn unless you reopen the North Road. Catherine laid the blue-stained cloth beside Harcourt's ledger. The same color marked Arthur's thumb, she said. Marcus examined the black wax sealing the threat. No crest had been pressed into it, but the paper carried the faint medicinal smell Catherine had noticed on the child's clothes. Someone wants the North Road opened without inspection, he said. Then Arthur is not the true object of the threat, Edmund replied. He is the excuse. Catherine looked at the map covering the library table. The North Road crossed Ashford Land, passed through a wooded gorge, and entered Blackthorn, near an abandoned toll house. Opening it completely would allow any carriage or commercial wagon to enter Sebastian's estate unnoticed. Refusing, however, would let the conspirators accuse her of endangering a child. We will allow Arthur's carriage through, she decided. No freight, no armed escort, and no additional passengers. Marcus's men will inspect it at Eastmere Gate. Nathaniel glanced at the letter. Sebastian will call that an insult. He called me barren before the court. He may survive an inspection. Before dawn, Catherine sent her terms to Sebastian and copied the message to Lord Pembroke. If Arthur was harmed, the court would know she had offered him protection. Sebastian's answer arrived within an hour. My son will not submit to Ashford custody. Open the road completely, or accept responsibility for obstructing the Blackthorn heir. Catherine placed his reply beside the threatening letter. Even with a child apparently in danger, Sebastian was demanding commercial access rather than protection. Either pride had blinded him again, or someone beside him needed the road opened for another purpose. Send both letters to Edmund's clerk, she ordered, then prepare my horse. By 7 o'clock, Catherine and Marcus were waiting at Eastmere Gate with 12 soldiers. Beyond the barrier, Blackthorn's coal wagon stood idle, while Ashford supply carts passed through the adjoining lane carrying flour, lamp oil, and winter medicine to the villages. Sebastian arrived beside a closed carriage. 4 armed retainers followed him, although Catherine's terms had forbidden an escort. Beatrice sat inside with Arthur. Sebastian dismounted. Remove the barrier. Your retainers remain here. The carriage will be searched before Arthur passes. You have no authority over my son. Then use another road. His gaze moved toward the immobilized coal wagons. This is not protection. It is theater. Catherine pointed to the supply carts. Your tenants are being fed. Only your profits have stopped moving. Beatrice opened the carriage door before Sebastian could answer. This delay is frightening, Arthur, she said. The boy sat rigidly against the upholstered seat. His dark coat was buttoned to his throat despite the warmth inside the carriage. The same blue stain remained around his right thumbnail. Catherine approached slowly. Good morning, Arthur. He looked at Beatrice before replying. Good morning, Your Grace. What day is your birthday? His lips parted, but no answer came. Beatrice stiffened. He is tired. Catherine kept her attention on the child. How old were you on your last birthday? 6. And where did you celebrate it? Arthur's fingers tightened around the edge of his coat. At Blackthorn. Sebastian frowned. You have never been to Blackthorn. The boy went pale. Beatrice reached for him. He means the house where he was raised. He has been taught to think of all his father's properties as Blackthorn. Who taught him that? Catherine asked. No one answered. Catherine climbed into the carriage and sat opposite Arthur. She did not touch him. Is Lady Beatrice your mother? Arthur looked toward her again. You must not confuse him, Beatrice warned. I asked him, not you. The boy swallowed. Lady Beatrice says I may call her mother when we are alone. A cold silence filled the carriage. Sebastian's expression shifted, but only briefly. He was raised apart from her. Such habits require time. Catherine noticed that Arthur's coat had been fastened incorrectly. One button was pushed through the wrong opening, as though he had dressed himself in haste. His cuffs were too large, and the stitching inside his collar bore the initials AF, not AB. Who dressed you this morning? She asked. I did. Where is your nurse? Lady Beatrice said I do not need her anymore. What is her name? Arthur hesitated. Mrs. Finch. Beatrice's hand closed around the carriage door. Catherine saw it. Where does Mrs. Finch live? I am not supposed to say. Sebastian stepped forward. That is enough. No, Catherine replied. Your entire petition rests on this child's identity. Yet he cannot name his birthday, has never visited your estate, does not naturally call Beatrice his mother, and is wearing clothes marked with another surname. She turned back to Arthur. I am not angry with you. Whatever the adults around you have asked you to say, none of this is your fault. His eyes filled with suspicion. Lady Beatrice said you would hate me. I do not. She said I took your place. No child takes a place that belongs to someone else. Arthur studied her face, as if searching for the cruelty he had been promised. Slowly, he reached beneath his shirt and pulled out a small silver locket. Beatrice moved toward him. Arthur, give that to me. The boy closed both hands around it. Mrs. Finch said I must keep it. Sebastian looked from Arthur to Beatrice. You told me the woman who raised him was dead. I said she could no longer care for him. You said she died of fever. Beatrice's composure cracked. I repeated what my father was told. Catherine held out her palm, but allowed Arthur to decide. After a long moment, he placed the locket in her hand. Inside was no portrait and no claim connecting him to Blackthorn. There was only a narrow piece of linen, folded twice around a scrap of paper. Written in faded brown ink were 4 words. Mary Finch, St. Anne's Parish. Beneath them appeared a date from 6 years earlier. Arthur touched the blue stain on his thumb. Dr. Harcourt told me that name must never be written again. Catherine closed the locket around the scrap bearing Mary Finch's name. Is Mrs. Finch your mother? She asked. Arthur looked frightened by the word. Dr. Harcourt said I must never call her that. Beatrice reached into the carriage. He is repeating nonsense. No, Catherine said. He is repeating the one thing you failed to teach him to hide. Sebastian demanded the locket, but Catherine placed it in Marcus's hand. It is now evidence connected to a disputed inheritance and a threat against Arthur's life. You have no right to take him, Sebastian said. I am not taking him. I am refusing to send him through an isolated road after someone threatened to kill him. Sebastian looked toward Arthur. The child had drawn his knees against his chest and was watching Beatrice with unmistakable fear. For once, the Duke did not immediately choose pride. Arthur was taken to Eastmere Lodge under joint Ashford and Blackthorn guard. Beatrice objected, but Sebastian ordered her to return to London. Catherine noticed that he did not allow Beatrice to say goodbye to the boy alone. Edmund departed for St. Anne's Parish with 2 clerks. Nathaniel began tracing every payment made to Harcourt, while Marcus assigned soldiers to protect Arthur and locate Mary Finch. Catherine remained at the lodge. She did not question Arthur as though he were a witness. She gave him food, showed him that his bedroom door would remain unlocked, and told every servant to address him simply as Arthur rather than the Blackthorn heir. Only after he stopped trembling did she ask about Mary. She made my clothes, he said. The ones I had before Lady Beatrice brought the new ones. The initials inside his collar, AF, were not accidental. Where did you live with her? Near a church with a red door. Dr. Harcourt came every month. He asked whether I remembered my lessons. What lessons? Arthur looked down at his hands. My father was the Duke of Blackthorn. My mother died after hiding me. I was born before the old Duke died. The same phrases Sebastian had used before the court. Did Mrs. Finch teach you those things? He shook his head. She told me to remember my real name. Before Catherine could ask what he meant, a rider arrived from London carrying Nathaniel's first report. 3 years earlier, Harcourt had begun receiving quarterly payments from a trust controlled by Lord Vale. The sums were too large to represent ordinary medical fees. A second account showed money paid to a woman named Mary Finch, until 6 weeks ago, when the payments abruptly stopped. Vale was paying for Arthur's concealment, Nathaniel said. Then he stopped because the boy was ready to be displayed. Have you found Mary? Not yet. Her last payment was collected by someone using Harcourt's authorization. Near sunset, Edmund returned from St. Anne's with copies of 2 different entries. The parish register listed Arthur Finch, born to Mary Finch 6 years earlier. No father was recorded. The date matched the paper hidden inside the locket. A second certificate had been filed with the inheritance petition in London. It named the same child Arthur Blackthorn, and identified Beatrice Vale as his mother and Sebastian as his father. The 2 documents contained identical birth dates, but the newer certificate had been written in blue ink. The same blue that stained Arthur's thumb. The parish clerk remembers Harcourt, Edmund said. He came 3 months ago requesting access to the old register. 2 pages disappeared the following morning. Can the original entry still be proved? Catherine asked. The clerk made a copy for the parish tithe records years ago. Harcourt did not know it existed. Catherine placed the 2 certificates side by side. Then Arthur is not Beatrice's son. Not according to the surviving record, Edmund said. But we still need Mary Finch or another witness who knew the circumstances of his birth. Arthur had mentioned another name while speaking with a maid at the lodge, Lucy Bell. She had worked at St. Anne's and sometimes watched him when Mary was ill. Edmund's clerks discovered that Lucy had left the parish shortly after Harcourt's first payment to Mary. No forwarding address remained. Catherine turned to Sebastian, who had listened from the opposite side of the table. When did Beatrice first tell you Arthur was your son? 7 weeks ago. And when did you sign the declaration recognizing him? Sebastian did not answer. Edmund removed another document from his case, the preliminary statement attached to the inheritance petition. Sebastian's signature appeared at the bottom. The date was 8 weeks earlier. Catherine stared at him. You recognized Arthur before Beatrice supposedly told you he existed. Sebastian's face tightened. Vale asked me to sign a confidential statement in preparation for evidence he promised to provide. You signed first and waited for someone to manufacture the proof afterward. I believed the evidence already existed. You believed what you needed to believe. Nathaniel turned the forged certificate toward the lamp. In its lower corner, nearly concealed beneath the registrar's seal, was a reference number linking it to a second sealed document. Not a birth record, a property agreement. Sebastian's recognition of Arthur had been filed together with an order granting Lord Vale temporary authority over the Blackthorn coal mines. Catherine placed the property agreement beside Sebastian's declaration of paternity. The 2 documents bore the same reference number and had been submitted together. By recognizing Arthur, Sebastian had also authorized Lord Vale to supervise the Blackthorn mines until the boy's inheritance claim was settled. You signed away control of the mines before Arthur's forged birth certificate existed, Catherine said. It was temporary security, Sebastian replied. Vale promised to protect the estate during the succession review. Vale did not protect Blackthorn. He positioned himself to take it. Sebastian pushed the agreement away. I did not know that document was attached, but you signed it. I trusted the explanation given to me. You trusted every document that gave you what you wanted, and questioned every warning that came from me. Marcus and Nathaniel remained near the doors, but Catherine asked them to leave. Edmund took the disputed papers into the adjoining room, where he could still hear if Sebastian threatened her. For 11 years, Catherine had defended her husband before creditors, ministers, tenants, and members of her own family. What remained between them would not be decided by another man. When the door closed, she faced Sebastian alone. Did you sleep with Beatrice? He turned toward the window. That is not relevant to the forged documents. It is the reason you were willing to believe Arthur might be yours. His silence answered before his voice did. Once, he admitted. 7 years ago. Catherine remembered that year. She had spent months recovering from the loss of their premature son. Sebastian had withdrawn into politics and rarely entered her rooms. Before or after our child died? After. How long after? His jaw tightened. Several weeks. Catherine felt the answer settle inside her with a coldness deeper than anger. I was still unable to walk without assistance. I was grieving too. And you carried your grief into Beatrice Vale's bed. Sebastian looked away. Did she tell you she was with child? Not then. She said nothing until 7 weeks ago, when Vale brought me Arthur's history. A history that had not yet been written. I believed Beatrice had concealed him to avoid scandal. You believed a woman could hide your son for 6 years, then produce him precisely when her father wanted your minds. She knew details about that night. So did you. So did Vale. Details prove an affair, not a child. Catherine opened Harcourt's ledger to the altered page. Why did Harcourt choose this particular page to replace with my false examination? Sebastian's expression changed. It was slight, a tightening around the eyes, a pause before he answered. But Catherine had spent 11 years reading the face he showed the world. You know what was removed? No. You recognize the initial. There are hundreds of names beginning with S, but only one made you afraid. He crossed the room. You are building an accusation from a damaged mark. I am asking why a physician who never examined me was willing to declare me incapable of bearing children. Vale provided the report. That is not what I asked. Sebastian said nothing. Catherine stepped closer. Did Harcourt examine you? His face lost its remaining color. 3 years ago, he said at last. The admission was quiet, but it destroyed the final defense he had carried into the room. Why? After 11 years without a surviving child, I wanted an answer. And what did he tell you? That an old illness may have damaged my ability to father children. May have? He said conception was unlikely, not impossible. Did you tell me? No. Did you request that I be examined by another physician? No. Yet you stood before the court and claimed I had concealed a permanent condition. Sebastian's voice hardened. Arthur appeared to prove Harcourt wrong. No, Arthur gave you permission to ignore what Harcourt told you. She saw the moment he wanted to deny it. Then his gaze fell upon the forged certificate and the date beside his own signature. You knew there was serious doubt, Catherine continued. You knew Harcourt had never examined me. You knew Beatrice's story was unverified. Still, you allowed that physician to place his seal beneath a lie. Vale said public action was necessary before the succession committee would consider Arthur. And the royal appointment? Sebastian did not answer. Catherine understood. Vale had offered him 3 things at once: a son, control of the succession, and the political position he had pursued for years. In return, Sebastian had needed only to believe the documents placed before him and destroy the credibility of the wife most likely to challenge them. A knock sounded from the adjoining room. Edmund entered carrying a narrow case index obtained from Harcourt's surgery under judicial order. Every appointment in the physician's main ledger was cross-referenced by date and patient number. The false page naming Catherine retained the original number of the entry it had replaced. Edmund set the index beside it. The number led to a sealed medical report from 3 years earlier. Sebastian moved toward the table. That document is private. So was the condition you accused me of before the entire court, Catherine replied. Edmund broke the judicial seal. The report did not use the modern certainty of a single word. Harcourt had written that a previous illness had left the patient with no observable evidence of generative capacity, and that the condition was, in his judgment, permanent. At the bottom appeared the patient's full name, Sebastian Blackthorn, Duke of Blackthorn. Catherine read the conclusion twice. Sebastian had known fathering a child was profoundly unlikely, yet when Arthur appeared, he had not demanded proof. He had chosen the version of events that rewarded him, and permitted Catherine to bear the shame of his own condition. Nathaniel entered with a second document recovered from Vale's bank. It was the payment authorizing Harcourt to replace Sebastian's medical entry with Catherine's false diagnosis. The money had been transferred the morning after Sebastian signed Arthur's recognition statement. Catherine looked at her husband. Vale purchased the lie, she said. But you gave him the reason it would succeed. Sebastian stared at his own name beneath Harcourt's conclusion. For the first time since the court hearing, he had no accusation left to place upon her. Then church bells began ringing from the direction of Blackthorn. A mine messenger arrived at Eastmere Lodge moments later. Lord Vale had presented Sebastian's signed agreement at the Southern Colliery and removed every supervisor loyal to Catherine. By nightfall, Vale would control the shafts, the payroll, and the underground records capable of proving how much of Blackthorn had been purchased with Ashford money. Catherine reached the Southern Colliery before sunset. Vale's seal had already replaced the Blackthorn crest above the mine office. 2 supervisors Catherine had trained stood outside with their account books under their arms, while unfamiliar overseers inspected the workers as if they were livestock. Lord Vale waited on the office steps. He held the agreement bearing Sebastian's signature. "You closed the roads," Vale said. "I protected the property endangered by your retaliation. You prepared this agreement before the roads were closed." "I prepared for the instability you would inevitably cause." Catherine took the document from Edmund and read the disputed clause aloud. Sebastian's recognition of Arthur permitted Vale Colliery Company to supervise the mines until the child's inheritance was confirmed. Nothing in the clause gave Vale ownership, but it granted him control of production, payroll, records, and access to the underground workings. Sebastian had handed him the machinery with which ownership could be manufactured later. "I revoke my authorization," Sebastian said. Vale smiled. "You cannot. The agreement protects your acknowledged heir from precisely that kind of change." "Arthur is not my acknowledged heir any longer. Then withdraw the petition before the Crown and publicly admit that you presented a false son." Sebastian fell silent. Vale had calculated correctly. Revoking Arthur meant confessing before the same court where Sebastian had condemned Catherine. Catherine looked at her husband. "That is the price. Pay it. I require time to prepare a formal statement." "You found enough courage to accuse me without preparation." Vale ordered his men to clear the steps. Catherine did not move. "For 11 years, I maintained the production ledgers, safety inspections, supply contracts, and wage schedules of these mines," she said. "If you remove my supervisors, no insurer will recognize your reports. Your brother's bank may intimidate insurers. It cannot stop coal from leaving the ground." "No, a collapsed ventilation shaft can do that." Catherine entered the office and examined Vale's new work schedule. He had doubled the night crew and ordered miners into the 3rd seam, a section she had closed the previous year after discovering unstable supports. "You will not send men into this passage." Vale took the schedule from her. "The seam contains the richest coal beneath Blackthorn. It also lies beneath the oldest section of the castle. The support calculations are incomplete. You are no longer the mine's administrator. Stone does not recognize your appointment." The miners gathered outside heard her. Vale could remove Catherine's title from the office, but he could not erase 11 years of trust. When his overseer ordered the night crew to assemble, not one man stepped forward. Vale turned to Sebastian. "Command your tenants." Sebastian looked at the miners, then at Catherine's old safety map hanging on the wall. "No one enters the 3rd seam until it is inspected," he said. It was the first time he had opposed Vale publicly, but Catherine felt no gratitude. He was protecting men he should never have endangered. Vale dismissed every miner who refused the shift. Nathaniel immediately stepped forward. "Ashford Bank will guarantee their wages until the court reviews this agreement." Vale's confidence faltered. He could control the payroll office, but he could not force men underground when Catherine's family ensured they would not starve for refusing. Edmund secured the production books under judicial seal. Marcus stationed soldiers only along Ashford roads, preventing Vale from removing estate records without obstructing lawful passenger traffic. Catherine addressed the workers. "Remain with your families tonight. No one enters a closed shaft, regardless of whose seal appears upon the order." Vale watched his newly acquired authority become useless around him. Then an elderly clerk approached Catherine secretly and placed a brass key in her hand. It belonged to the underground records room beneath the mine office. "A woman came here 3 days ago," he whispered. "She called herself Lucy Bell. She asked for the original Finch birth record. Where is she now?" The clerk looked toward the dark entrance of the mine. Vale's men took her below before dawn. A bell rang once from somewhere deep inside the abandoned third seam. It was not the signal for a working shift. It was the miners' emergency call. The emergency bell rang again from beneath the third seam. Catherine took the brass key and turned to Owen Price, the senior supervisor Vale had dismissed. "Where does that signal originate?" "The underground records room," Price said. "It has a manual line for anyone trapped behind the fire door." Marcus ordered 2 soldiers to accompany them, but Catherine selected experienced miners instead. "Soldiers do not know the passages. I need men who can recognize a failing support in darkness." Sebastian insisted on following. Catherine did not argue. If the mine collapsed because of the authority he had given Vale, he would witness the danger himself. They entered through the inspection shaft. Catherine had supervised its reopening 8 years earlier, after the main entrance became blocked during a winter collapse. The passage was narrow but stable, leading beneath the mine office without crossing the closed third seam. At the records room, they found the iron door locked from the outside. The brass key opened it. Lucy Bell sat beside the emergency rope, weak and covered in coal dust. Vale's men had confined her there after discovering she had returned for the parish records. Catherine gave her water. "Is Arthur Mary Finch's son?" "Yes," Lucy replied. "Mary was his mother. His father was a schoolmaster who died before Arthur was born. Lady Beatrice had never seen the child until 6 weeks ago. Why did Mary accept Vale's money? Harcourt told her it paid for Arthur's treatment. When she realized they were changing his name, she hid the original record and tried to leave." "Where is she now?" Lucy lowered her eyes. "She died of fever last winter. Harcourt took Arthur the day after her burial." Catherine felt grief, but not surprise. Arthur's fear had already told her that he had lost the only mother he knew. Lucy pointed toward a locked cabinet at the back of the room. Inside were the parish copy of Arthur's birth entry, Harcourt's payments to Mary, and an early draft of the false certificate naming Beatrice and Sebastian. The evidence connected the child, the physician, and Vale's money without inventing another identity for Arthur. There was also a survey map marked in red. Catherine recognized the third seam and the ventilation channels beneath Blackthorn Castle. 2 support points had been circled beside the underground archive. Price examined the markings. "Those supports hold the abandoned passage above the records vault. If they fail?" Marcus asked. "The vault will be buried," Catherine answered, "and smoke from the lower galleries will have nowhere to escape." Lucy gripped Catherine's sleeve. "I heard Vale's overseers talking outside the door. They planned to blast the supports after the final day crew reached the surface. They said the collapse would destroy the records and look like the result of the Duchess closing the roads." Price went still. "The day crew has not returned." 47 miners remained below, repairing pumps in a neighboring gallery. Vale's new overseers had changed their exit route without informing Catherine's supervisors. Sebastian looked at the red marks on the map. "My signature placed those men under Vale's command." "Yes," Catherine said, "and admitting that will not bring them back." She ordered Marcus to escort Lucy and the documents to the surface. Price would lead Catherine toward the lower gallery, while Sebastian returned to raise the alarm. Before anyone could move, a dull explosion rolled through the rock. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lamps bent sharply as the air reversed direction. Vale had destroyed the first ventilation support, while 47 Blackthorn miners were still underground. The explosion extinguished 2 lamps and filled the passage with dust. Catherine pressed the survey map against the wall. "The blast destroyed the western support," Price said. "The day crew will be trapped behind the lower air door. If we open the central channel, smoke will reach them first." Catherine traced the older ventilation route with her finger. Years earlier, she had ordered an auxiliary shaft reopened beneath the dairy after a winter collapse. "We reach them through the inspection passage and lead them toward the dairy shaft." Marcus escorted Lucy and the evidence toward the surface. Sebastian remained with Catherine and Price. "You were told to raise the alarm," Catherine said. "Marcus can do it faster. I will carry whoever cannot walk." It was the first useful decision he had made without attempting to seize command. They entered the lower gallery. Smoke moved along the ceiling, and the timber supports groaned under the displaced weight. Catherine found the 47 miners gathered behind a locked iron air door. Several were coughing, but all were alive. Price struck the lock with a hammer. "It will take too long." Sebastian recognized the new chain. Vale's overseers installed it this afternoon. He used an iron bar to break the fastening while Catherine directed the miners into pairs. The injured went first. Every man kept one hand upon the shoulder ahead of him, so no one would disappear in the smoke. Halfway to the auxiliary shaft, the ceiling cracked. "Do not run," Catherine shouted. "Keep the line together." A fallen beam trapped a young pump worker. Sebastian and Price lifted it while Catherine pulled the man free. The Duke's hands bled, but no one stopped to thank him. They reached the dairy shaft minutes before the lower gallery filled with smoke. One by one, all 47 miners emerged into the night. Families crowded the yard, but Catherine ordered the roll called before allowing anyone to leave. Every name was answered. Near the damaged shaft, Price found the remains of a powder charge attached to a measured fuse. Beside it lay a brass token belonging to Vale's chief overseer. The explosion had not been an accident. Lord Vale appeared at the mine gate and claimed Catherine's blockade had prevented proper maintenance. Catherine held up the broken fuse. Roads do not lock air doors from the outside. The rescued miners had seen the chain. They had also heard Vale's overseers ordering them to use the altered exit route. Vale's authority collapsed before the accusation left the yard. Edmund suspended the property agreement pending investigation. Marcus detained the chief overseer, who admitted receiving the blasting order through Dr. Harcourt. But Harcourt had already disappeared. Then Catherine noticed blue smoke rising from the mine office. Through the window, she saw the physician feeding documents into the stove, including Vale's private instruction ledger, the last record connecting the false heir to the attempted destruction of the mine. Catherine reached the mine office before the fire spread beyond the stove. Harcourt had overturned a cabinet and was feeding papers into the flames. Vale's private instruction ledger lay open on the desk, several pages already torn from its binding. Marcus's soldiers surrounded the building. "Harcourt," Catherine called through the doorway, "step away from the stove." The physician seized the remaining ledger and held it over the fire. "Release me and Lord Vale, or this burns." Catherine did not move. "You mistake that book for our only evidence." Harcourt's hand hesitated. "Lucy Bell is alive," Catherine continued. "We recovered Arthur's original birth record, your payments to Mary Finch, the draft certificate naming Beatrice, and the medical report you removed from your appointment ledger." She pointed toward the mine yard. 47 miners can testify that Vale's men chained the air door. His chief overseer has already admitted receiving the blasting order through you. Harcourt looked through the window. The rescued workers stood beside their families while Marcus's men guarded the detained overseer. "If you burn that ledger," Catherine said, "Vale will deny every instruction and place the entire conspiracy upon you. He will protect me. He locked Lucy underground and sent you here to destroy the only record proving you acted under his direction. Does that resemble protection?" The fire cracked beneath the ledger. Catherine saw fear replace Harcourt's confidence. "Give Edmund the book and testify truthfully. Your cooperation will be recorded. Destroy it, and you face the false diagnosis, forged birth certificate, imprisonment of a witness, threat against Arthur, and attempted destruction of a working mine alone." Harcourt looked toward Vale, who remained under guard outside. Vale shouted, "Burn it!" That command decided everything. Harcourt pulled the ledger away from the flames. Marcus entered and restrained him while Catherine extinguished the burning papers with a bucket of sand. Several documents were lost, but most of the instruction ledger survived. Edmund examined it beneath a lamp. The entries established a simple chain. Vale had paid Harcourt to monitor Mary Finch and Arthur. When Sebastian's private examination suggested he was unlikely to father a child, Vale ordered Harcourt to preserve Arthur as a possible claimant. 6 weeks earlier, Harcourt had created the false birth certificate. Beatrice agreed to pose as Arthur's mother, while Vale offered Sebastian political support if he publicly recognized the boy. After Sebastian signed, Harcourt inserted Catherine's false diagnosis into the medical ledger. The linked property agreement then placed the Blackthorn mines under Vale's control during the inheritance review. The final entry ordered the destruction of the underground records room. Beside it, Harcourt had written, "The miners must be clear before the charge is set." Catherine looked at him. "You knew men remained below. I told Vale the final crew had not surfaced. He ordered the fuse lit anyway. Why? Because Lucy had reached the records room. If she escaped with the original certificate, Arthur's claim would collapse." Harcourt confessed that the threatening letter sent to Ashford House had been designed to force Catherine to open the North Road completely. Vale intended to use that route to move forged records and mine equipment into Blackthorn without inspection. Arthur had never been the intended victim. He had merely been the child whose danger made the demand appear urgent. Sebastian listened without speaking. Every stage of the conspiracy had required Vale's planning, Harcourt's forgery, and Beatrice's cooperation, but none could have succeeded without his signature and his public accusation against Catherine. Edmund sealed the surviving evidence. Lord Vale and Harcourt were taken into custody pending a royal inquiry. The property agreement was suspended, and Catherine's supervisors resumed control of the mine, solely to secure the shafts and protect the workers. Before dawn, Nathaniel arrived with Catherine's marriage settlement. One clause stated that if Sebastian publicly accused her of marital fraud without lawful proof, every property purchased with Ashford money would revert to her independent control. The roads, Eastmere Bridge, 2 mills, part of the coalfields, and the capital maintaining Blackthorn had all been financed through her settlement. Sebastian's accusation had not only allowed Vale into his mines, it had also activated the clause capable of removing nearly half of Blackthorn's working wealth from his hands. A royal commission was summoned to St. James's Palace, the same chamber where Catherine had been called barren. Sebastian received his order to testify before the peers he had misled. This time, Catherine would not be standing before them as the accused. She would be holding the evidence. The royal commission assembled in the same chamber where Sebastian had accused Catherine of barrenness. This time, Harcourt's original ledger rested beneath judicial seal. Beside it lay Arthur's parish record, the forged birth certificate, Vale's payment accounts, the mine agreement, and the scorched instruction book recovered from the office. Catherine entered with her 3 brothers. Arthur remained at Eastmere Lodge under Lucy's protection. Catherine would not display him before the court as Sebastian and Vale had done. Lord Pembroke opened the inquiry by reading the accusation Sebastian had made against his wife. Then Edmund presented the medical evidence. Harcourt admitted that he had never examined Catherine. The page declaring her incapable of bearing children had been inserted after Sebastian signed Arthur's recognition statement. The appointment number originally belonged to Sebastian's private examination. "Did Duchess Catherine know of her husband's condition?" Pembroke asked. "No," Harcourt replied. "Did she conceal any diagnosis of her own?" "No." "Then why did you place your seal beneath that declaration?" Harcourt looked toward Lord Vale. "I was paid to do so." Nathaniel produced the transfers from Vale's trust. The dates matched Harcourt's surveillance of Mary Finch, the creation of Arthur's false certificate, and the alteration of the medical ledger. Lucy testified next. She confirmed that Arthur was Mary Finch's son, and that Beatrice had never met him before Vale's men removed him from Mary's home. The original parish entry and tithe copy supported every part of her statement. Beatrice had resisted appearing until Edmund showed her the instruction ledger. Faced with charges of fraud and conspiracy, she agreed to testify truthfully. "Is Arthur your son?" Pembroke asked. "No. Did you tell Duke Sebastian otherwise?" "Yes. Why?" "My father promised that Sebastian would marry me after Catherine was disgraced. He said Arthur needed only to be accepted long enough for the property agreement to take effect." "Did Sebastian know the certificate was forged?" "Not at first. But he signed before the certificate existed." A murmur moved through the chamber. Vale rose in protest. "My daughter is lying to save herself." Catherine opened the scorched instruction ledger. It recorded Vale's payments, Harcourt's tasks, the planned use of Arthur, and the order to destroy the underground archive. The captured overseer's sworn statement confirmed that Vale had ordered the ventilation supports blasted despite knowing the day crew remained below. One denial after another failed. Finally, Catherine presented the linked documents bearing Sebastian's signature. "Lord Vale could not enter Blackthorn's mines by right," she said. "He required my husband to recognize Arthur first. Sebastian signed without a verified birth record, then publicly destroyed my credibility, so I could not challenge the agreement in time." Pembroke turned to the Duke. "Did Lord Vale compel your signature?" "No." "Did he compel you to accuse your wife?" "No." "Did you know Dr. Harcourt had never examined her?" Sebastian looked at Catherine across the chamber. "Yes." The room became silent. Sebastian stood before the same peers who had watched him humiliate her. "I knew Harcourt had examined me," he said. "I knew there was serious doubt that I could have fathered Arthur. I concealed my affair with Lady Beatrice and accepted an unverified child because I wanted an heir and Vale's political support." His voice tightened, but he continued. "When Catherine challenged the documents, I did not investigate. I accused her instead. The lie protected my ambition, so I chose not to question it." He withdrew Arthur's inheritance petition and renounced every claim based upon the false certificate. "Catherine did not deceive Blackthorn," he said. "She preserved it for 11 years. Vale entered my mines because I gave him authority. 47 men nearly died because I valued an heir and an appointment more than evidence. Catherine's name was formally cleared. The commission ordered Vale to stand trial for fraud, conspiracy, unlawful confinement, and attempted destruction of the mine. Harcourt faced prosecution for falsifying medical and parish records, coercing witnesses, and assisting the sabotage. Beatrice's cooperation would be considered at sentencing, but every claim she had made concerning Arthur was publicly withdrawn. Arthur was declared unrelated to Blackthorn and freed from Sebastian's claim. The mine agreement was voided. Control of the coal fields passed temporarily to an independent trust representing the estate, the Ashford settlement, and the miners. Then Edmund presented Catherine's marriage settlement. The commission confirmed that Sebastian's unsupported public accusation had activated its restoration clause. The Ashford roads, Eastmere Bridge, 2 mills, part of the mines, and the capital used to sustain Blackthorn reverted to Catherine's independent control. Sebastian lost the royal appointment Vale had promised him. His political privileges were suspended pending further review, and he was ordered to compensate every worker endangered by the explosion. After the chamber emptied, he placed the sapphire necklace Catherine had abandoned upon the table between them. "I have restored your name," he said. "I will surrender every property the settlement requires." "You have obeyed the commission," Catherine replied. "That is not the same as restoring what you destroyed. What remains?" Catherine placed a formal deed of separation beside the necklace. "My freedom." The investigations lasted 8 weeks. The Bellamy Mill accounts proved that Wexford had diverted government funds, purchased political influence, forged official warrants, and ordered the destruction of records that could expose him. Henry's abduction and the fires at Blackthorn Harbor and Bellamy Mill were added to the case against him. He was removed from office and committed to Crown custody pending trial. Jonathan Crane confessed after the mill workers identified him as the man who locked the printing hall. Sir Rowland Pike lost his position and was prosecuted for enforcing warrants he knew had not passed lawful review. Mrs. Vale admitted 18 years of espionage inside Ashford House. Her cooperation reduced her sentence, but Beatrice refused to restore her to the household. Lydia surrendered every letter she possessed, because her testimony preserved the Bellamy records and exposed the duplicate signet. She avoided imprisonment. She left London to live with a widowed aunt, carrying neither Caroline's ribbon nor the marriage her father had promised her. The Ashford archive was examined as Caroline requested. Several of Beatrice's political bargains were publicly censured. 2 former allies lost government appointments, while others were cleared after the complete correspondence proved they had committed no crime. Beatrice's influence diminished, but she accepted the consequence. "I taught Edmund that power could be managed in private," she told Caroline. "I should not be surprised that he eventually believed secrecy was the same as innocence." Edmund's case remained separate. Before a full parliamentary committee, he admitted accepting secret payments, signing unlawful customs exemptions, opening Ashford House to Wexford's agents, and knowingly supporting a petition designed to strip his wife of control over her property. His government appointment was revoked. He was barred from public office, removed from every parliamentary committee, and suspended from taking part in proceedings while the financial inquiry continued. Blackthorn Harbour remained under independent supervision. Part of Edmund's personal income was assigned to compensate the dock workers, mill workers, and clerks endangered by the fires. The petition against Caroline was declared invalid. Every estate in her marriage settlement was confirmed as her exclusive property. Edmund surrendered all claims to its income and agreed not to challenge a formal separation. During his final appearance, he stood alone before the same men he had once expected to welcome him into the cabinet. "Caroline wrote the speeches that built my reputation," he said. "She managed the estates that financed my life and warned me when my choices endangered others. I mistook her judgment for control because I resented owing my success to someone I could not command." He paused. "Wexford offered me corruption. I accepted it. He offered me a way to silence my wife, and I signed it after understanding what it would do. No deception removes that choice." Caroline listened without rescuing him from the silence that followed. "My wife owes me neither forgiveness nor the opportunity to become better at her expense," Edmund finished. 3 months later, Caroline hosted supper at Ashford House. The harbour master sat beside a parliamentary clerk. Bellamy mill workers shared the table with servants who had resisted the unlawful search. Henry, fully recovered, occupied the chair beside Beatrice. No guest had been invited merely because of rank. Before the first course, a servant brought Caroline a parcel from Edmund. Inside lay the ducal coronet removed from her place at Blackthorn's final supper, and a letter requesting permission to speak with her. Caroline left the letter sealed. Edmund waited outside beneath a winter rain. He had lost weight, and no political secretary or noble ally stood behind him. "I came to return what I took from you," he said. Caroline held the coronet between them. "You did not give me back my name. You merely stopped trying to live upon it." He lowered his eyes. "I know. The separation papers are complete. You will receive them tomorrow. I will not oppose them." He did not ask whether she still loved him. He did not ask to enter the house. "I intend to repair what I can," he said. "I understand that repair does not purchase your return. For the first time, you understand the difference between consequence and punishment. Punishment ends when a debt is paid. Consequence remains after the payment." Edmund bowed and walked back toward his waiting carriage. Caroline returned to the dining room. At their last supper, he had removed her chair and announced that she would leave Blackthorn as no one. Now her place waited beside her mother. Surrounded by people who knew precisely who she was, she set the coronet on an empty side table. She did not place it on her head. Then Caroline took her seat beneath her own name, and the doors closed behind her.